Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. This is Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. Good morning. It is 6 o'clock here in the morning, Calgary, Alberta, May the 14th, Friday morning. I'm just so happy it's Friday. And it's one child abuse survivor to another. I'm happy to be here. This is a 30-minute live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. And the chat room is open if you want to sit in there. That's great. We're going to finish up looking at an article that I found on Little Warrior's website called About Child Sexual Abuse Prevention. And it's a great article. There's 7 steps to it. And so we'll finish up with that and continue on with an article I found on the Canadian Red Cross's website, Open Your Eyes to Sexual Exploitation. It's a great article. I think people, you see the reports in the paper and stuff about the exploitation, especially the sexual exploitation of children regarding like child pornography, children being, taken and abducted and put into the sex slave trade and whatnot that's going on, in the United States and in Canada and actually all over the world. So I wanted to take a look at that too because it's a great article and I think it deserves to be out there, really being circulated amongst everybody because this is happening and we need to talk about it. So I'm so glad that you could be here. And, I'm not a professional. I don't have any professional certificates regarding, counseling or therapist certificates. I'm just a survivor of child abuse myself, and I know how hard it is for people who have lived with this sort of thing and who have been through this kind of abuse. And it's very, very hard. And I just wanted to be one more voice out there just to let people know, they're not alone. And because so many times survivors just suffer along in silence and they don't know who to trust. They don't know who to talk to. They don't realize that there is help out there. I didn't realize really that there was so much available help until about, I'd say, less than 3 years. Less than 3 years that I started actually reaching out, and it's really only been about the last maybe 8 months that I really started to connect with people and get some help. And really work with other survivors and talk to them and find out like how they did it and how they made it, So I have come a really long way in my healing. And I just hope everybody that's out there that's listening to this, if you've suffered at the hands of another person and been abused in your lifetime, that you would know that there is help out there and there is hope, and you just have to keep looking until you find what works for you, Like some people like to go find a good therapist or a good counselor. Some people would rather just do like online group support, just depending on how, what your circumstances are and whatnot and what you're comfortable with. There is good help out there. And we just have to start reaching out and looking for it. So that's why I just thought I'd do this show, just to be one more voice and also to bring education, awareness, and prevention, out to people that I find as I study child rights and human rights, just in between courses because I can't afford to go right now. Eventually, I'll be going back to school and finish up with what I was working on, which is international community development, which encompassed child rights, human rights, and just the whole works. So, it's at least a 2 to 3 year program that I had to take a break from because I couldn't afford to go because my job was finished and I was out of work for a little while. Then I finally got a job, but then I was behind the 8 ball as far as finances go, so I had to stop going. But I will be going back to school, and so in the meantime, I keep studying and I just keep looking for. I'm just studying on my own, basically looking for information and constantly searching for information and good articles regarding child rights, human rights, and especially the prevention of child abuse. Right. So that's why I'm doing this show, and I just thought I'd pass it on to everybody else, and just to be one more voice out there, and just talking about child abuse, the issues surrounding it, and then because I am a survivor of child abuse, I thought, why am I just sitting here not trying to help people, especially since I know, since 3 years ago, when I finally decided to fight to live instead of fight to die, I thought, why not share this with people and just to say that, to let people know that we can do it. We do deserve to have a good life, and we deserve to have a healthy, whole life, and if that's just it, right? A lot of people who've been through child abuse and suffered through child abuse don't realize that, and they just continue to suffer on their whole entire lives, and it's really sad. And I was doing that until just a few years ago. So that's what I mean. It's so important people realize that they can get help too. And there's so many survivors. I know a lot of survivors now because I've been reaching out. And these people are really, I just look up to them because they are living examples of the fact that it can be done, and that we can all, in our own time, in our own process, heal, And it's so comforting just to know that, right? For so long I didn't think it was possible. I just didn't think I would ever get past the feelings I was having as far as the abuse went and as far as what happened to my family went. So I never thought that I'd be able to look at things any different than I was, and then until that one day that I decided to change it all myself. And I thought, nobody's going to do this for me, and nobody's going to care if I just self-sabotage, self-destruct my life and just, end my life or whatever, nobody's going to care. But the fight to live sort of took over, and I thought, what am I doing? I need to fight to live, and then, have a good life, and then I win. I decided to win this fight, so I'm staying alive, and I just hope everybody else will too, and just keep reaching out and getting some help, right? And so, listen at your own discretion. That's all I say on every single show. The topics of abuse are very sensitive, and there's a lot of people who aren't really that far along in their healing, and sometimes listening to these types of programs, any program about abuse or whatnot, can trigger people, and you have to know that what to listen, what's okay for you to listen to. So make sure you listen at your own discretion, and just, keep in mind that the topics are sensitive, and they could cause you to be uncomfortable. So, you do want to make sure that you know how far along you are in your healing, and then if you're just uncomfortable with the topic, just turn the show off, because you won't be hurting my feelings at all. And if you're a young person under the age of 18, I ask that you get someone to listen to this show with you, like who's older, an adult, who can help you make the decision whether you should be listening to it or not. I don't know where the Blog Talk players are now. They'll be placed around different places, and who knows where they're at. Young people could be listening, and so there's a lot of adult content on my shows. I talk about everything related to abuse, child abuse, domestic violence and whatnot, and abuse. So I just think that young people should have permission to listen to this show. And then, then the person, if you have someone who's listening with you, they can sort of help you find information regarding the topics. If it's sort of upsetting and all of a sudden something doesn't make sense, you've never heard about it before, which is quite common because people don't talk a lot about abuse. Whether it's child abuse, domestic violence, child sexual predators and whatnot. A lot of people, nobody really wants to talk about it. And that's the whole issue. That's why we need to start talking about it, because this is real. It's a real problem. It's an epidemic and a scourge on society, has been forever. But we're just now getting to the point where people are saying, okay, enough is enough, and let's do something about this. Let's make some changes here to protect children. And there's been groups trying to do this since at least, in our own time and era. As far as Lifeline goes, the 1940s, the 1950s, the child rights issues really came up, and the UN, drafted up the UN Convention on the Rights of a Child, and then from there, it's just getting better all the time. Now there's still a lot of problems, and there's still a lot of work to be done, but there are at least some measures in place for the world, really, whoever signs this convention to protect the rights of the child. We're working on it. Everybody's working on it. But in the meantime, children are dying at the hands of caregivers and parents. They're not getting what they need to live and to survive. The right to life is being taken away from them. So that's the whole issue. I study child rights and human rights. I know all about them. And so, it's so important that young people realize that they have the right to be protected and be safe. And so you do not want to become victim or prey to some sort of crazy child sexual predator online. And there's ways to keep yourself safe. And you just have to start looking around on the websites for child internet safety, period. Just start typing in internet safety, and it will bring up all kinds of websites from like the FBI, government websites that tell people how to stay safe online. It's just so important because this is happening. There are millions of child sexual predators online at any given time trying to get a hold of children. And they will tell people whatever they have to tell them. They'll tell children whatever they have to tell them to lure them into meeting them someplace and then getting a hold of them and then sexually assaulting them or killing them. So you really have to keep yourself safe, and parents really owe it to their children to become educated and aware of what's going on and then make the changes that need to happen to protect yourself and your family and keep your children safe, Young people shouldn't be left up to the young people, to the kids, right? The parents actually and the caregivers are responsible for making sure that their children are protected, and responsible for teaching their children how to stay protected without, causing them a lot of emotional, damage as far as fear goes. You don't want to be living in fear. That's no fun. That's not a good way to live. But just getting education, getting educated on what's actually happening. I think that most of the problems with abuse and crime and stuff like that is just a lack of education. And people, if they would just take the time to read up on this stuff and get this education, they could save themselves a lot of trouble and a lot of heartache, and possibly even save their children's lives. That's just the whole issue, right? We want to save children's lives. We want to save children from a lifetime of hurt, and it's just so important that you keep yourself safe and keep your children safe, right? So we're going to continue on with this article. LittleWarriors.ca, they're out of Edmonton, Alberta. It's a great website. All kinds of great information on there regarding child sexual abuse, how to prevent it. Parents can get help if they don't quite know how to, or even when to start talking about good touch, bad touch, and things like that, age appropriateness and whatnot. And these guys have done a whole lot of work on the study of child sexual abuse and how to prevent it and how to talk to your children. So it's a great website for parents. It's also a great website for kids, because there's all kinds of information on there for kids on how to stay safe, how to protect their friends and their family. So good. And that's www.littlewarriors.ca. And we're going to continue on looking at Step 6 and Step 7. But the whole idea here, they had 7 steps to prevention. And Step 1 was learn the facts. Step 2, minimize opportunity. Step 3, talk about it. Step 4, stay alert. We went over this yesterday. Step 5, make a plan. And Step 6 is act on suspicions. Step 7 is get involved. So Step 6, act on suspicions. I'm just reading right from their site here. The future well-being of a child is at stake. It says, by acting on suspicions of child sexual abuse, you will save not only one child, but perhaps countless others. Many of those who sexually abuse children have multiple victims. We kind of went over this yesterday. On average, if you averaged it out, the statistics say that the average child sexual predator actually assaults or has abused between like 100 and 120 children. So that's the whole issue, right? It's not just one child. You could save perhaps hundreds and hundreds of children. So that's why we have to act on suspicions. Really, we do. It says, you may be faced with a situation where you suspect abuse but don't have any proof. Suspicions are scary, but trust your instincts. Have the courage to report the suspected abuse. We have to, right? We have to. If you suspect abuse, you have to report it, because you wouldn't suspect it if you didn't think there was something wrong. It's not like, you know what I mean? If you figure, everything's fine, you're not going to think the child's being abused. But when you have a suspicion, it's generally because something has warned you, there's a red flag up, something doesn't seem right, or you've noticed signs and symptoms because you're aware of the signs and symptoms of child sexual abuse and all abuse, right? Whether it's physical, emotional, verbal, psychological, there are signs, there are symptoms that everyone should know so that we can help protect children, right? And so, if you know the signs and symptoms of abuse and you notice something's wrong and a child seems to have some of these issues and you just suspect abuse, you need to report it. It's so important. You could save that child's life and many other children's, right? So where to get help? It says these resources can help you if you are unsure of whether abuse has occurred. They have a little link there that you can click on where to get help. There's all kinds of resources on their site. We looked at that yesterday. But they do not substitute for making an official report. Remember that you may be a mandated reporter in your state, and you may be the only source of protection for that child. So that's why it's so important, to make sure that you can click on those links and stuff on that website, and but then just make sure that you report it. This is so important. Step 7, get involved. Volunteer and financially support organizations such as Little Warriors that fight the tragedy of child sexual abuse. I would say just to support anybody in your local community who seems to be doing some good work and really knows, has a program in place that's working and it's showing it's working, and they're not just using the money unwisely and not doing anything to actually help the community and help the children in the community. I mean, it's a lot of work to find this stuff out because you have to do some research. That's what I'm doing right now. But some of these groups, they take in a whole lot of money, but then they're not really doing anything with it to really make these changes and help protect children. So, and they might have started out with the best of intentions, but they for whatever reason, they don't have a good enough think tank within the organization that gets things done. So that's why it's great to find groups within the community who are actually, so a lot of times it's these small initiatives, grassroots initiatives that are actually making a difference because they've come up with some great ideas that are actually working. It's good to support things that are actually moving in a positive direction, that are making a difference, because it's sort of, if it's working, it's working. If it's not, it's not. So I wouldn't support groups that are not doing anything and just taking money in. I would support those groups out there, anyone that you just feel is doing a good job and getting the word out and helping to protect children, right? So it does take some homework for sure to find those groups, but it's doable, and it might take 6 months, but at least it's moving in a positive direction. And volunteering for people, you know what I mean? Everybody's got limited resources as far as finances go. I mean, everybody's got limited time. I mean, we're all busy. Everybody's got lives to live and things to do, and they're busy themselves, right? But I think even just the smallest amount of effort really makes a difference if everybody was going to do it. And mostly, I just think everybody should take a look around at the kids in your own life and make sure they're not being abused, That's the main thing, right? There's so many children who, they must have grandparents who look in on them, and aunts and uncles and stuff, and people like cousins and whatnot who could spot the abuse and who would know the abuse is going on. But if they're being abused as well or grew up in the same type of environment, then they might not say anything because they grew up like that, so they figure there's nothing wrong with it, or they're afraid to tell because they know they've been abused themselves and they know just what would happen if they did tell. They start to freak out, so they just stay silent. This happens a lot. There's a lot of psychological reasons why lots of people don't report abuse. It's really unfortunate because who pays the price? That child does. And here's family members that know about these things, and even mothers who know that their children are being sexually abused and they do nothing about it, or even fathers who know, because mothers do abuse their children sexually, and it's really sad, but it's true, and fathers, right? So usually if the other partner tends to know what's going on, they might be turning a blind eye because they don't want to face what's the aftermath of reporting it, you know what I mean? But we owe it to that child, and it's against the law to not report child abuse, and it's against the law to enable it. So, I just would hope that they would bring up every person who allows a child to be abused and bring them up on charges as well. I really think we need tougher laws. I think a lot of people would think twice about letting something like that go by if they thought that they were going to have to do, 20 to 50 years for not reporting the abuse. I'm sorry, I don't care. They might have been victims themselves, but as the adult in the situation and the only one who can get that child to safety, that child can't get itself to safety. So the other parent who enables it really is just as responsible as the other one. That's my opinion, but I really believe that, and there's so much abuse that goes on that could be reported but is just not reported because the other person is either too afraid or doesn't want to suffer along, and they just want to pretend nothing's wrong so that they can go on and just continue on. And in the meantime, the child pays the price. So I think that's really wrong, and people need to start taking a look at what's going on in their own lives and their own families, right? It says, what can I do to help children in my community? Get involved by donating your time and resources to support organizations such as these, like prevention programs, crisis information and referral services, sexual assault centers, and whatnot. Use your voice and your vote to make your community a safer place for children. Ask that schools and organizations in your community have child sexual abuse prevention policies and help with their creation. Ask about other adults to do the same. It says, Bring Darkness to Light, Stewards of Children Prevention Program to your community. That's a program you can check out right on their website. You can check that. They have a link to it, Darkness to Light, Stewards of Children. So, if you want to take a look at that, you can just go right on the website and bring that up. Support legislation that protects children. Demand that the government put more resources into protecting children from sexual abuse and into responding to reports of sexual abuse, right? So we need more government funding. We need better laws. And it's just so important, right? It says, break the cycle of silence. If child sexual abuse is part of your history, do not keep silent. By breaking the cycle of silence, you will break free from the trauma you carry within you and begin an important healing process. And you will help protect other children from suffering the way that you did. So that's the end of the article there for the 7 steps to preventing child sexual abuse from Little Warriors. And it's a great article. It's good. Anything out there that's bringing out education and awareness to people is just awesome. And I really like Little Warriors. And they're just about really the only group up here in Canada that's actually noticeable, you know what I mean? They had a few ads out, they had a few billboards and whatnot, even a couple of advertisements that, you know, they're really the only ones that are actually doing anything, especially in this, you know, the western half of Canada. The other, you know, I don't see anybody else working on child prevention so, you know, with so much effort, right? To really, you know, they're really in the schools. They've got Stewards of Children Prevention Program. They have programs within the schools in Alberta and different places that are implemented to help prevent child sexual abuse, and I think that's awesome. And you know, because there's not very many groups out there, and you know, there's tons of groups getting funding, but as far as prevention and awareness goes, but they're not doing anything with the money. They just have a website up, and then what are they doing about it? You know what I mean? Like, it's not really productive or proactive. You know what I mean? So that's why I say find a group who's actually really out there doing the good work and getting, you know, protecting children and getting this information out to people, teaching everyone what's going on and how to protect yourself and your children. So that's just a good website. I really like it. But there's got to be more, and I know there is, that are actually really making a difference. You know what I mean? So it's just good to find one that you care about and then get involved and get you know, help them out, right? So I wanted to look at an article I found on the Canadian Red Cross. Found it the other day, and it's at www.redcross.ca. And it's called Open Your Eyes to Sexual Exploitation. And they said here, I'll just read right from the article. I pulled it off because I just wanted, there was some interesting sort of statistics and whatnot on there, and I just thought it was very interesting. It says, youth, it's easy to get sucked in. Know the facts and protect yourself. Read on. Adults, change begins with your awareness. Know the facts. Police agencies across Canada report growing incidences of child sexual exploitation online and offline. All young people can be at risk if they are not educated and aware. Sexual exploitation is any attempt to use a position of power, authority, or trust to compel a vulnerable person to take part in sexual activity. If one person gains sexual gratification, financial reward, or social political status through the abuse of another person's sexuality, that is exploitation. A child, defined as someone under the age of 18, is sexually exploited if he or she is selling sex in exchange for money, food, shelter, drugs, transportation, or anything else of value. Is forced here's another one, is forced into sexual activity through violence or threats, or manipulated through bribes, lies, or other means. That's a form of sexual exploitation, right? If the child is used in pornography, that's definitely sexual exploitation. If the child is trafficked, moved outside their familiar surroundings to be used for sexual purposes, human trafficking is the third most profitable organized criminal activity after trafficking in drugs and small arms. So this is just pathetic, it's sad, it's wrong, and I can't believe that more people are not angry about this and just getting on board with groups that are trying to stop child exploitation of any kind, but especially sexual exploitation. It's crazy. It's going on in North America. It's going on all around the world. It's not just in these third world countries where, we see a lot of stuff on TV about, these different countries that it's just so bad because there's no rights for any children in those countries, right? But North America has rights set in place and laws and protection and whatnot for children, and still it's going on in this country, and there's lots of people who support it and lots of people who, back these criminals up, so that's why they get away with what they do, and it's horrible, absolutely horrible. It says it's against the law. Providing any form of payment in exchange for any sexual activity with someone under age 18 is not prostitution. It's child sexual abuse. So, it is illegal because it is known to be damaging to the individual youth and to society. The Criminal Code of Canada makes it illegal to procure or solicit someone to engage in illicit sex with another person, often called pimping. When convicted of pimping someone under age 18, the sentence can be much higher. I would hope so. Communicating with someone under age 18 for the purpose of obtaining sexual services is against the law in Canada. It is illegal to use a computer to lure a child to engage in sexual activities. A Canadian who travels to another country to engage in sex with underage youth can be charged in Canada, which they do bust them every now and then. It's so great to see that. I love to see those people going down to a whole lot of jail time. How dare they go to another country just so they can get in on their child sex exploitation stuff, But it does happen, and there's certain countries that are just so, corrupt with that stuff, right? And I mean, we got to blame their own country first of all for allowing it to happen, and then we have to blame these stupid people who travel there just for that main purpose. And so when I see stuff like that, I hope that they throw the book at those people and put them away for a very, very long time, maybe to never come out. I'd like to see people go to jail and just stay there for the rest of their lives who assault children. It would be great just to get rid of them all, have them all behind bars, and never see them again, right? Unfortunately, we just, I wish that they would, but they usually just get a slap on the wrist, a fine, and a couple of years in jail. No big deal, right? It's a violation of rights and international laws. Article 34 of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, ratified by Canada and almost every other country, clearly requires that states must protect children from all forms of sexual exploitation and abuse. So it's a law. It's actually it's a human rights violation. It's a child rights violation, and that's why I fight for child rights. I'm standing up for all children, all child rights all around the world. But the thing is, North America, has its own share of human rights violations. These people that abuse their children every day are violating human rights. I think they got to start coming down on them, as looking at it as that, not just like as a parent who had, a problem and killed their child accidentally because he beat them to death. What they need to start doing is looking at it as a human rights violation and put these people away for a very long time, and open up special places for them out in the middle of nowhere, and just leave them there. You know what I mean? And just let them suffer on in their pathetic lives for the rest of their lives. They chose to abuse those children. They choose to do what they do, and I think that they like to blame everything. Oh, well, it was this or it was that. It was, I was having a lot of stress in my life, so I killed my baby. It's like, well, you know what? Other people have stress in their lives. They don't kill their babies. They don't even hurt them. So I think that we're just making too many excuses for these abusers, and we're making too many excuses in protecting people who don't need protection. It's the children that need the protection, right? So we really have to send a message to people. I wish the laws would change, like right now, to send a message to people that they need to stop abusing their children and get help. You can always just give your child to the Child Protection Services. Leave it at the fire station. I don't care. Do something, you know what I mean? Take your child to the fire station, drop it off, and say goodbye. But don't kill your child. Don't kill your children, and don't beat them to death. You know what I mean? I'm sorry. They have a better chance than a foster home. I'm sorry. I know there's a lot of problems with foster homes, but it's better than ending up in a pine box somewhere, you know what I mean, or cremated, right? I mean, these children are dying at the hands of their parents and caregivers every day, and there'll be more tomorrow and the next day and the next day, right? And so the whole thing is they could have saved themselves from being murderers if they just take their child into some sort of child protective agency and say, look, I can't look after my child. I'm so sorry. It's too bad. I'm just going to kill this child, so I need to take my child. I need to give the child to you so that I don't do that, right? And I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? It's better than killing that child. And then just don't have any more. These people that are doing this, they shouldn't be allowed to have any more kids as far as I'm concerned, right? Generally, they do pop out a whole bunch and, screw them all up, right? So it's just horrible. And my voice is really bad this morning. Sorry about that. So it says it happens every day in our communities. Sometimes sexual exploitation happens in plain view on our streets, or it flickers across the computer screen in pornographic images. Often, and especially when it involves children and youth, it is hidden. It happens in brothels, massage parlors, and in private homes. Gang houses called trick pads are a primary venue for sexual exploitation. And sexual exploitation is not inevitable, they said. When we create a united front and say no more, when we educate ourselves and our children that they have a right to control their own bodies, when we teach them how to get help and make sure that there are resources they can access, we have a good chance of reducing the sexual exploitation of children and youth. So there's a little bit more to this article, and you can read that yourself. Prevention, education is the key to ending exploitation. And that's off the Canadian Red Cross website at, let's see here, www.redcross.ca. And so, yeah, everybody, we have about a minute left, and thanks so much for tuning in. I'm Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. So happy to be. Check out our website, http Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. It's updated daily with all kinds of information, what's happening out there, headlines and daily topics, and what is really going on out there. It's a real eye-opener. And also, there's tons of resources and information on there regarding how to, how to report child abuse, what are the signs and symptoms of child abuse, and different groups you can get involved with. There's resources and links And there's help for parents on there who are having a hard time parenting and think that they might be abusing their child and they don't want to. There's all kinds of help on there for everyone, and there's help on there for survivors of child abuse like myself. So it's really it's a website for everyone, and I hope everyone will go and check it out. And just go through it, because there's a lot of information on there. It does take a while, but it is some great information. So take care of yourselves, everybody. I'll be on tonight at 9:30 p.m. Child Abuse Prevention, Human Rights Prevention is up to us. I'll also be on tonight Dreamcatchers Talk Radio with Donna Shear at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. I really appreciate your support. Have a great day and take care of yourselves.